Good evening and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 105. I'm continuing the story of the Wheelmaker's sons. Now, you might remember that Kude had driven to the palace of the king and the queen and the princess and had driven his cart with the whole entourage behind it back and forth in front of the palace. The wagon made quite a racket as it went back and forth. The princess watched from her window, her portico, and her window, and she just found it so hilarious at a certain point that she started laughing and could not stop laughing. And the king and the queen, who heard her laughing, came and joined her on the portico. And they began laughing. And they all began laughing so hard that they couldn't look into each other's eyes, nor could they look outside again at the wagon, because there were tears streaming down their faces. It was hard for them to even breathe. They were laughing so hard. Well, after they composed themselves, the king was able to speak again. He sent his guards out to go and get Kude, bring him in. And so Kude was brought before the king, and the king thanked him for getting his daughter to laugh finally after all these years. He said, do you know what I promised to the one who would get my daughter to laugh? Kude said, no, sire, I don't. He said, well, I promised that person my daughter's hand in marriage. Oh, that's nice, said Kude. But there's more. I also offered all of my kingdom to that person. And Kude said, well, that's very nice. Thank you. Then the king said, but I also offered that person my crown, my daughter, my kingdom, and my crown. Kude said, well, thank you. Thank you so much. The king then said, but there is one condition. Because the king, he thought he was dealing with just, someone who was lower class than the princess. There is one condition, the king said. You must, in the span of one night, eat 30 loaves of bread and drink 30 gallons of milk. The king wanted to present Kude with a task that he could not complete, because he didn't want Kude to marry his daughter. Kude said, fine. Well, the bakers made the bread and the milk was brought, and it was all put in a room, and Kude was locked into this room at night. But his friends, who had told him that we are friends together and whatever befalls us on this venture, the tall one and the big fat one with the big mouth, they went below the window of the cell where Kude was kept. And the big one was hoisted up to the window. The tall one held him up, and Kude began to hand the fat man loaves of bread, followed by gallons of milk. And this man loved to eat so much that it was in no time at all that he had eaten all the bread and consumed all the milk. The rest of the night, Kude slept soundly in that cell and the beautiful bed that had been left to him. And in the morning, when the king came and opened the door and found all the milk gone and the bread gone as well, Kude was there saying, I am starving. Could you please get me something to eat? So breakfast was brought. The king during this time thought, a man that can eat that much, drink that much, he's not a fit companion for my daughter. He then said, well, Kude, there's a second task you must fulfill for me. Some rather extreme distance away, there's a well that has the most healing waters, crystal clear and cold. I have this flask here. If within the hour you can bring me that water, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage and everything else I said. Kude not listen. He didn't lose a minute. He went running out of the palace, and he went and found his friends. And he asked his long-legged friend if he could complete the task. His long-legged friend said, oh, yes, of course I can. Off he ran with a flask in hand. He got to the well and he filled it up, and he thought, I've gotten here so quickly. I do have a little bit of time that I can rest so that I can run my full speed back. So he put the flask down on the ground. He lay down beside it, and within seconds he was asleep. Quarter of an hour passed, a half hour passed. Kude, he thought, this is going to be bad. I'm not going to fulfill this task. When his friend with the golden balls came up and said, I can see where he's laying, because the man had vision that was far better than even an eagle. I can hit him with one of my balls. So he took one of the golden balls and threw it, but it went a little too far. And then he took a second one, and it was a little too short. Then he aimed carefully, and he hit the third one. He hit the long-legged man in the leg. And up he sprung. He gathered the balls together in the flask and went running back within the hour and presented it to the king. Well, the king said, there is one final task, but I must tell you that this is the final task. There will not be another beyond this one. And tomorrow we'll find out what the final task is and whether Kude is able to fulfill it. All right. Thanks for joining. Hope you're enjoying. Have a good rest of your day or evening.